Woo! Welcome back, man. Walter, how you doing, man?
I'm great, man. I can't call it. Just surfing through this draft monotony that we going through right now.
Man, yeah. So for those that don't know, okay, I'm from Texas, so just give us a break. We had to take last week off. I mean, some people, I was without electricity, unfortunately, but luckily, for the most part, was able to stay safe and get that back and going. But hey, welcome back to the East West Football Network's draft show. Today we're going to be covering the front seven of the defensive line, of the defensive group, and so we're going to mention some names. Of course, remember these names because these names are going to be very beneficial when you're looking at the second and third rounds and fourth, and later on. You want to know some of these names? We're going to bring these names to you, and of course, we might miss some names out because man, list, this year's crop. I mean, Walt. I mean, what can we say? There's so much depth, isn't there?
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of depth. Um, I think if you look at just the top of the class, it doesn't really shine as bright as some of the prior draft classes as far as defensive tackles are mainly concerned, and some of the DNs. I think there's a lot of projects in this class. There's a lot of guys with some high ceilings, a lot of specialists, but overall, I think there is a solid amount of depth in this class.
No, yeah, most definitely on both. The defensive line and at the linebacker position. So let's get right into it. Just Walt, go ahead and take us in. I mean, what are you looking at? What are you seeing at the defensive line?
All right, well, got five guys I'm going to discuss real quick. One guy's Quiddy Pay, who's actually from here in Michigan, University of Michigan. He's still raw, but when you consider what he brings to the table, he's probably the most physically gifted and freakish athlete in this class. Maybe the entire draft. This is a guy who's been double, triple teamed since high school. He was double teamed a ton a lot at Michigan last year, this past season as well, before things got shut down. And he's a guy he's strong enough and fast enough to pretty much be played inside and outside. He's going to give guards problems. He can give tackles problems. The only issue is even if you go back to high school and you really um, track Quiddy's production, his production has never matched his talent, and he has had some issues with his health. So he's a very high ceiling guy. I've heard some people. I wouldn't go this far. Don't quote me on it, but I've heard some people make a Reggie White comparison on television. I've heard a ton of different guys. So NFL is really high on him right now. They see the potential. Everyone sees the potential in him, and there's a good chance someone's going to take him very high.
Yeah, I think that everybody was looking forward to the combine this year, knowing that we're not going. Now that we know that we're not going to have a combine, but apparently he was going to blow up the combine. I will say this:
Yeah.
his get off is insane. His get off when
Yes.
at the snap of the ball, he's the first one off the line. I mean, he's beating everybody to it. What do you got next?
Um, Carlos Basham, senior, Wake Forest. When you look at Carlos, he's pretty much an old school power rusher.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. You look at him, he's gotten better with each season. In 2019, which is best season, he had 57 tackles, 11 sacks, three forced fumbles. This shortened season, he had 28 tackles, 20 for loss, five sacks, one forced fumble, and that's in a shortened season. So as I said before, Carlos, he's a old school power rusher. Depends a lot on leverage and hand placement, but he does have a wide enough assortment of pass rushing skills. So I think he could actually become a double digit sack guy at the next level.
I mean, he does look like he has the prototypical size and what you alluded to, right?
Yep.
Um, who's next?
One of my favorite players in the entire draft, and that's Patrick Jones, the edge rusher from Pitt.
Uh,
I don't get what you guys don't like about him, Jerry.
it's not that I don't like about him. I think that if you look at it, if you look at his body of work, I mean, each year he's just gotten better and better and better. And I mean, when you need an edge rusher to to get to a quarterback, that's exactly what he's been able to do. I think what was his stat line this year was what, 7.5, I believe, sacks. So
Uh,
yes,
yeah, yeah. So Patrick. We actually had a brief discussion in our draft meeting last week about Patrick. You and I and Costa and Alec. And if you look at it, he's 6'5", 260, so he fits that prototypical mold that you want out of that edge rusher.
yeah,
He plays the run with the same energy and the same sense of urgency as he does when he's trying to get to the quarterback. He's not a close but no cigar pass rusher. He gets to the quarterback, he brings the quarterback down, he causes strip fumbles, he gets sack fumbles. He does everything you pretty much want him to do. Now, I do understand that there's a bias against seniors. And I don't care what position the guy is at. If he's a senior and I don't care how productive he's been over 4 years, people have this idea that, well, he's maxed out. I'd rather take a gamble on the 21 to 22-year-old who I don't know a damn thing about. So I think at the end of the day, Patrick is going to bring you a lot. He's going to bring a lot to the table. He's going to make someone very, very happy.
oh yeah. I mean, I could see it. I could see it. It's just sometimes when you look at Quiddy Pay and Jones, I mean, there's obviously a difference athletically, right? So I think that's
Right,
just kind of one of those
right.
things where some of these guys like Carlos Basham and Patrick, sometimes they kind of have to take the back seat to somebody that's just an all around athlete.
Yep,
Who's last? Or you got two more, right?
yep, yep. Another one of my favorite players in the entire draft, and that's Marvin Wilson, the guy who I understand a lot of people are pretty down on right now. But for a second, I just want to take a few seconds to really discuss Marvin Wilson. Thing is this: I think Aaron Donald has spoiled people on what their expectations out of a defensive tackle is supposed to be. You typically you don't expect or even require your defensive tackle to give you 13, 14, 15, 16 sacks. If he can do that, hey, that's icing on the cake. But first and foremost, from your defensive tackle, typically you want him to be able to stop the run first. Contain the run, stop the run, fill gaps. Marvin does that pretty much better, in my estimation, after watching the film over every other defensive tackle in this draft, especially the noses, and Barmore also. Second, can he consistently push the pocket back into the quarterback's lap? Marvin can do that. Is Marvin going to get you? Will Marvin ever be a 12, 13, 11 sack guy? Probably not. But I think Marvin's value, what he brings to that defensive line, cannot always be measured in sack totals. Third, can your defensive tackle two gap? Now, for those people out here who may not understand what two gapping is, I'm pretty sure, Jerry, you know what two gapping is.
Oh yeah, you're
When
not
your defensive tackle engages with the guard, especially, and this is very, very vital for defensive tackles who play in 3-4s,
for
you
sure.
must be able to two gap. You must be able to engage with the guard and fill those gaps to the left or to the right when it's a running play. Marvin does that completely better than Barmore. And for what I've seen, he does that better than pretty much consistently every other defensive tackle in this draft. So I understand the concerns with Marvin. There's been concerns about Marvin's his stamina, his endurance, his work ethic. Not necessarily his work ethic as far as practice and playing on the field, but mainly his conditioning. There's been concerns about Marvin's conditioning. But when you go back and you look at the best of Marvin, we can go back to the 2019 season and look at the Louisville game. Even though he wasn't really matched up with Mekhi Becton, Marvin destroyed that Louisville offensive line completely. So I think if people would take a step back away from the Aaron Donald fascination and assuming that, well, my defensive tackle has to give me pass rush ability. He has to give me pass rush ability. It's icing on the cake. If your defensive tackle fills gaps, can two gap, and can consistently push the center of that pocket, that's what you should be happy with. Now, if he can get you 9 sacks the way Sue used to, And Dominican Sue for us would get us 8.5, 9, 10, maybe 11 sacks on top of everything else he brought to the table.
I mean, look at the league nowadays. I mean, we have a different array of, 3-4. Even on the 4-3 schemes,
True.
they're all doing hybrid. So sometimes you do need these style of defensive tackles. Marvin Wilson, had he came out last year, I believe he would have been a top 10 prospect. So it just goes to speak that sometimes when the hype is there for you to be a first round draft pick, maybe it's best if you do if you do just go ahead and jump on it and take your
Yeah.
spot as a first rounder. But in this case, I mean, there's a lot of things that we don't know about was going on with Florida State. I mean, it's unfortunate that things like this happen to these young men, but hopefully Marvin Wilson will be able to show off and be able to be a name to reckon with in the NFL. Did you have on your list who else or did you have any notable mentions?
Oh, I got one more guy I want to talk about.
All right.
Guy I've been hard on going back to prior discussions you and I have had last summer, and that's Gregory Russo. Um, so, Gregory, former basketball player, long, lean body, outrageously long arms, super quick, fast, gets off the ball in a hurry. My issue with Greg is this. For one, he's just really learning the position.
True.
His hand placement is currently terrible right now. From what, at least from what we've seen last. And to be fair to him, I understand, he didn't play this season. He chose to set out. But at the end of the day, all of us can really go off of is 2019 film. And for what I saw from him in 2019, he was able to use his freakish athleticism basically as his crutch. And he was able to take advantage of bad tackles, just to be honest, bad tackles and bad guards. Now, when you look at him completely as a prospect, like I said, the hand placement has to improve because when guys, I've noticed, when tackles get their hands on him, it's like he's sort of a fish out of water. He doesn't know where to grab, he doesn't know how to push, how to jet out. So I think he needs to finish that. He needs to really clean that up. Second, the lack of pass rush imagination from him is scary. We see the long arms, we see him turn the corner, we assume, oh, that's a pass rush move. No, he if you can stop him dead in his tracks from getting to that edge, he has no cutback across the tackle's face. He doesn't have too much of that. I think he loses imagination. It's going to take the right defense coordinator, I believe, at the next level to really teach him. They're going to have to be patient with him because he's still learning the position. He's not a 4-year starter like a Carlos Basham or a Patrick Jones, as we just mentioned before. But he does have plenty of tools, and also the strength. Now, from what I've heard, he's put on about 12 to 15 pounds since 2019. Because I believe in 2019 he was listed at 249, 250 somewhere. And recently I saw he was listed at 260. So I'm glad to see that he put that weight on. But overall, I think as a prospect, I can understand why teams are drooling over him. The ability's there. The ability's surely there. He's 6'7", he's 260 pounds. To me, he's sort of the equivalent of the defensive version of Kyle Pitts. Given the fact that if you look at what Russo can bring to the table, if he can put all the cards together, Miami used Russo in a variety of different ways. They lined him up outside off the edge with his hand to the ground. They lined him up standing up outside. They would bounce him inside where he was just completely too quick for guards. So I think he's a guy where if you can move him around a lot, you can really maximize what he can do because he's too big of a mismatch. Too big of a mismatch. But everything's going to come down to things that we don't know about these kids. We don't know how much they love football. We don't know how hard they work. We don't know about their football intellect. Can they grasp concepts? Can they grasp schemes? So a lot of it's gonna come down to Gregory Russo, but the talent is definitely there.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, like you said, people they love his size. Obviously, when they saw him, they're like, wow, he can, he looks like JPP, right? Jason Pierre-Paul. We've heard all kinds of things about him, but like you said, I mean, 2020 he opted out, which we understand if players chose to opt out, we understand it was for their own safety of themselves and their
Well,
families.
that and this also, when these guys, for a guy like him that opted out, you already pretty much didn't have that much film anyway.
Yeah, it's true.
He was already new to the position, relatively new to that position. So you had that flash in the pan season because at the end of the day, that's all we can call it, honestly. Not
Yeah,
to be offensive, but it was a flash in the pan season because we didn't see anything after it because you chose to not play the following season.
yeah, for sure. I mean, like is what we said earlier, right? I mean, he had already hurt first round buzz, so why not go ahead and ride that train as long as you can. So, do you have any other notable mentions that you'd like to name? I know I got some for the defensive tackles.
Oh yeah, yeah. Of course, your guy Darius Stills, you're a big fan of. He's growing on me. I think he has to get a little more technically sound
Oh yeah,
before I can put a stamp on him.
what's your
Christian
biggest?
Barmore. Barmore also. I think Barmore is a guy, and we've had this discussion. I think he's getting treatment that's similar to what Quentin Williams got when he
Yep,
came out of Alabama.
Alabama,
Sort of a 1 year guy that came from out of nowhere. Had
also
some
Alabama.
inconsistencies. Right, he's had some inconsistencies in some games. And at one point in time, I caught myself getting kind of caught up in it. And as I told you a couple of weeks ago, I had to sit down and go back over some Marvin Wilson tape and go back over some Barmore tape. And when I just compared the two, I just saw what it was. That Marvin was, if I was running the defense, I would want Marvin Wilson in the middle of my defense over Christian Barmore.
Look real quick. So answer this question. I mean, can he be a three technique if you need a three technique?
Marvin Wilson,
Marvin Wilson.
yes, not
It look.
consistently. I don't think he can consistently do it, but I do believe that Marvin, depending on what you need Marvin to do and how you use Marvin with his play counts also, because when it comes to these defensive tackles, play counts matter also.
For
But
sure.
I do believe if it's a pass rush situation, you want to line them up on the outside shoulder of the tackle, go ahead and do it. You want to line them up at zero, go ahead and do it. You want to line them up at the one. I think ideally he's going to be a one. I wouldn't necessarily want to see him as a zero in the 3-4. I don't. I wouldn't. I think Marvin brings more talent to the table than what would be exposed if you just put him in a zero, in the 3-4, where he's just eating double teams all day. I think if you bounce him around to some one, to some two, Marvin can make some plays.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've aside from those names, I mean, we've heard Jalen Toyman, another one. He's out of Pitt.
True.
Yeah, he finished with 10.5 sacks in 2019. He set out this year. There's like you said, Darius Stills. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's the UCLA prospect, right? There's so many there's so much depth at this defensive tackle. But let's go ahead and round circle. Let's go round circle. Now it's my turn, right? So let's go ahead and talk about some of the prospects we have here at the linebacking position, covering the back end. Now, of course, I mean, the one at the top, I mean, there's not much of a debate there. Micah Parsons, I mean, that guy's just a monster. Right now, we right now, where we're gonna see him drafted, it's the big question mark. I know that there's a bit of a scandal, but I'm pretty sure every NFL team will do their due diligence with him, and I'm pretty sure once he gets into the league, he's gonna come in with a bigger chip on his shoulder. But let's go down the list, right? Some other players that you may see in the first round. This is very possible. Is Jeremiah Owusu Komara, right out of Notre Dame? That guy is just an impact player. Kind of undersized, right? I believe he doesn't even weigh what 210 pounds. I believe. I think he's actually smaller than that. But for him to be able to cover slot wide receivers, I mean, his game speaks for itself. Just an impact player overall. Moving along, Zavin Collins out of Tulsa, man, that guy he was a quarterback in high school. He's huge. This is a huge man. I mean, we're talking about 6'4", 260 playing linebacker, and this guy
Yeah.
can just he could just do it all. He's just an absolute baller. You need the interceptions, he can get you interceptions. If you need somebody to rush, he can rush too. I mean, whatever it is that you need him, this is what I would say. This would be a true Bill Parcells ish type of player. Um, let's keep it moving. We got some Mizzou fam on the East West, and I know that they know this name very well. Nick Bolton. This guy also a bit undersized. You know, I think he's a 6 footer, but at Mizzou, an absolute standout. I mean, he could just do it all as well. A do it all kind of player. You know, you saw him with interceptions and just, I mean, oh man, just the hits that I mean, just violent hits all over the field. Go down. We got Dylan Moses, your favorite out of Alabama. Of course, Alabama has always been a not only a cornerback factory, but a linebacking factory. And I mean, Dylan Moses is that. I mean, he's sideline to sideline. You know, he can, he's ideal for what you are looking for in a linebacker these days. Um, I He can play the Sam position or the Will position. I think that ideally he looks like a good 4-3 defensive prospect at the linebacker position. And we got some notable. I got some notable mentions, and they're not really notable mentions. These are names that we should be very familiarized. You got Baron Browning out of Ohio State. I mean, if you can keep this guy clean, he's gonna come away with all the plays you need. Chaz Surratt out of North
Mm.
Carolina. North Carolina, he came in as a quarterback. He played quarterback for a while. I believe it was a wrist injury that held him out, and I think he wanted to transfer after they asked him to make the change. He made the change, and man, this is a guy that plays sideline to sideline, very good in coverage. So I think at the next level, this is ideally what the NFL is looking for. This type of linebacker. So I think that Chad Surratt was able to make a great transition. And let me give some love to Jabril Cox out of with the LSU, right? But he actually was an actual stud, a standout at North Dakota State. And so what he was able to do there, I mean, it was it was a it was a leap of faith for him to jump into the SEC, but you know it wasn't perfect, but he obviously showed that he can play with the big boys. So I'm pretty sure whatever team finds him and fits into their system, they're gonna get an absolute baller there. And we got a couple of notable mentions. Pete Warner, also out of Ohio State, an ideal 4-3 linebacker, and Cameron McGrone out of Michigan as well. Michigan seems to always have a couple of names out there on the defensive side every year in the draft. And Cameron McGorn, I mean, ideally, I think that he's going to be a great Mike at the next level. So, woo,
Jerry,
there
question.
is our front seven. Go ahead.
What do
What's
you
up?
think the odds are? What do you think the odds are Zavin Collins by the time the draft rolls around goes ahead of Michael Parsons?
Oh man, this is very possible, guys. I think that when you actually look at the body of work, this kid is his football IQ is up there. It's very great high IQ. I think that everything he's just an overall a great team player. I know that shout out to Abe. He's a part of the fantasy team here on East West, and he actually knows him very well. Uh, had nothing but great things to speak about it. I think that this is very possible. I can actually see, like, you know, I don't think the Patriots are going to draft the quarterback, and they're picking what 15th. If Michael Parsons and Zavion Collins is there, I can actually see Zavion Collins going over him. This is very possible because of obviously the the recent news of the bullying on during team activities or off season right program.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's rough. Um,
It is.
Mike has got a lot. Yeah, Mike has got a lot going on right now.
Yeah,
We don't know if it's true or not. We don't know how much of it's being exaggerated, how much of it is actually fact. But Fact is, you would hate to see these kids go through this, which is
Yeah,
supposed to be the most funnest time of their lives,
yeah,
most exciting time of their lives, and you've got guys. I mean, from what I've heard, players left and right go through this. All players go through this, where
it's true.
they go to team meetings and teams tell them, like, I talked to a Spanish teacher in high school, or I talked to some classmates in one of your courses in college that said that they didn't like you and you were mean to everyone and you were this, and you were that. You didn't practice hard and you treated the guys who didn't start like they weren't part of the team. There's always things that go on. You know,
For sure.
the moment you reach the biggest moment of your life, there's going to be people reaching up to pull you back down.
Yep,
Whether things are true or false, we don't know. I just find it no. I just it bothers me every year during draft time when we have to talk.
it's true. I mean, it. I think that one of the names that just came to my name was the Laramie Tunsil. I mean, look at that
Right,
on draft day. You know what I mean? That could
right.
have waited. That could have waited till afterwards. But it is what it is. It's the nature of the beast, and the one thing that we all hope for you know a player like Michael Parson is that he's able to bounce back and actually learn from the actual situation, regardless if he was involved or not, and maybe perhaps learn from it so he could become a leader, because this young man, he belongs in the NFL, and he's going to absolutely be a terror for all offensives. So hopefully he just learns and gets better from this. Well,
Yeah,
we got to the front seven. So it looks like this Thursday we're going to be covering the defensive back position that goes corners, safeties. My goodness, we got a list to go through. So guys, stay tuned on Thursday, and we'll be more than happy to share. As always, we want to thank you for following and being patient with us, and we'll